order, and welcome everybody to episode 19 of the HeartSpace with myself, Alicia, and my beautiful co-host, Jazz.
Hi, guys.
And today our topic is shadow work. So we're going to delve a little bit into what shadow work is, our own personal experience regarding shadow work. So I want to hand it over to you, Jazz, and I want to know, what does shadow work mean to you?
Shadow work, like when you hear that word shadow work, you think of like something dark. It kind of triggers you in some way, just that term shadow, because you think of the dark, you think of ghouls and ghosts, but it actually has nothing to do with that. It's really looking at the disowned parts or the rejected parts of your personality that you subconsciously have pushed back. And it usually stems from some type of childhood rejection or trauma. And, just for an example, if you are a little boy who's crying and, your parents then say to you, stop crying, you're acting like a little girl, you then get the impression in your brain that this part of you is unacceptable, and you kind of like repress that and you shut it down and you reject that side of you, and you actually carry that with you. It stays with you, and from little moments like that, that's where the shadow actually stems, through childhood trauma and rejection. And I feel like at this point in time, a lot of people are learning what shadow work is. They're willing to do the inner work, or they're wanting to learn more about what that is. And it usually comes through triggers along the way. How do you identify with shadow work?
Yeah, no, so I think that's a really good explanation of the overall perspective on shadow work. I believe it's also it's sides of us that we've suppressed, sides of us that we don't want other people to see. We don't want our friends to see these parts of us. We don't want to see our family to see parts of us, or maybe our family and friends have seen it and they've pulled us up on it, but we don't want to actually acknowledge that. Yeah. You don't want to take responsibility of that side of yourself. So I think for me, as I've just started diving into this whole journey of shadow work, and oh my God, like I had questioned, I had asked my friend and I said, do you think I've done my shadow work? Because I've been thinking about it recently, like, I don't think I have. Like, I think all of us are able to admit that there's parts of ourselves that we don't like. And I'm not talking about the physical, we're talking about what's inside. And so obviously there's parts of me that I didn't like, or traits, and I'm just like, but I didn't really think much of it. And it wasn't until my friend had explained to me what her shadow was, I was like, holy moly. I was like, okay, are we going that deep? So it made me think about these certain ways that I can be. And this side of me comes out when I'm feeling hurt. Someone's hurt me. If someone's, playing little mind games with me, it's like, you want to play it like that? Well, I'll just pull my shadow out and my shadow can start to play it like that too. Like, it's just little things like that, but it comes out as a protector mode. Because if you want to talk about it in the range of frequency and vibration, your shadow is a lower vibration compared to the light side of us, and our light sort of vibrates at a higher frequency. And that's the best way I could probably describe it. And shadow, light, dark light, it sort of works together, like if you think of it like that. And to vibrate at a lower frequency, it really does affect that light side of us, because we're vibrating at a higher frequency. So a shadow sort of swoops on in and takes care of that. But what happens is it's the aftermath on, okay, shadow's going to start playing up, or shadow's going to start doing all this kind of stuff. But what are the repercussions? What are the consequences of that? So it's sort of recognizing these traits, these parts of you that come out when provoked or in protected mode. And I guess that comes down to how you respond. There's a difference between reacting and responding as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't mean to go blah, 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 but it's all on the top of my
No,
head.
you're explaining it great from your perspective too. And I know that, like, we're going to touch on our triggers and what we've been dealing with our own personal journey. Like, a part of this whole awakening experience over the last 2 years has been like a journey of growth and expansion of my consciousness, because when you do start to acknowledge the shadow sides of yourself, you're acknowledging those parts you've kept dormant for so long or rejected. By accepting that there is this part of you and being gentle with yourself and kind to yourself, and knowing that it's okay. It's okay to have these darker sides. We all have these darker things or things that we are ashamed of. It's all part of our human experience. And, you know, it's all different facets of what makes us human, I guess. And I think one thing I've been working on and I've had huge growth in is, you know, one of my shadow sides was keeping myself small because I didn't want to be seen. I was, you know, too scared to speak out. I was very much a people pleaser, and didn't want to voice my opinion on anything. Like, I have said here in this space several times that I was that person that would scroll through, you know, social media, reading everyone else's opinions, but I would not dare speak my own because I didn't want to get into debates with people. I didn't like confrontation. I think that stems from having a mother who was very controlling, because my mother was very self-conscious of herself and didn't know parts of herself. So if we were acting up, she saw it as a projection of her and her mothering. So I think that when I put those two pieces together, I understood why I kept myself small, because I had an overbearing mother who liked to keep control of, you know, her children. And I don't think she did it. Again, I feel like she was acting out of her shadow self-consciously because of childhood trauma, you know, and feelings of not feeling worthy enough. So just piecing all that together has put the pieces of the puzzle to me, because over your span of your lifetime, you kind of lose pieces of yourself. And I think this last 2 years, for a lot of people collectively, we're taking those pieces back and we're putting ourselves together and we're healing.
Yeah. I could agree with that. I think so after having this conversation with my friend, and I smiled because I finally was able to acknowledge my shadow. I gave shadow a name. And oh, what a name it is.
What's the name, if you don't mind sharing? You don't have to.
No, the psychotic narcissist.
Yeah.
And that is why I said, because I put this to Facebook, as you saw my video, the psychotic narcissist. So it's like, if I can go into that mindset if I really wanted to, and it's a protected mode. I can play the narcissist if someone really is trying to poke the bear, let's say, you know, I can play those silly little games. I don't want to. I don't like that side of me. So I have ignored that side of me for so long, but something recently sort of happened in my life where it's actually brought it to the surface. And I didn't realize it was Miss Psychotic Narcissist that was playing little games as well. And I was like, oh. And I was like, okay. So, and she was coming out in protected mode because I was feeling hurt. So that was something that I recognized. And so by acknowledging your dark side, by acknowledging your shadow, by giving it a name even, it shows that you're not wanting to keep that shadow side suppressed anymore. You're acknowledging it. And the more you acknowledge it, you become aware of when these sides are coming out in your day-to-day, like in interactions and like, for example, like now I'm choosing not to react with my shadow and whatever scenario I'm going through at the moment. I'm I'm moving forward, but now I have acknowledged my shadow. It feels like she doesn't need to come out and be that person now. Like she can just simmer back. And there's something beautiful with the shadow as well. When you acknowledge the shadow, when you acknowledge all these traits, it's not exactly having, like, I feel like I don't need to do the work on these traits. These traits are a part of me. They're a protectant side of me. And now I'm aware of it. I acknowledge it. They're there. However, it's how I utilize it now. And so I don't, it's like, so it's becoming consciously aware of when that's going to be provoked. But it's also about nourishing that side of you, nourishing it. And that's why I smile about it, because I'm not afraid like anymore. Like people would be like, oh my God, the psychotic narcissist. But that doesn't define who I am. Like I know that's not who I am as a whole. Yeah. That's not me. That's just traits of me.
And that's very powerful to know that there's that side of you, but still be okay with yourself, to still be able to stand here and voice that part of you, and still be okay with your inner core, because you know who you are at your core.
Exactly. And the thing is, when you nourish those sides of you, like, yes, I can be like that. Yep. Oh, there's that trait. Oh, she wants to come out, like, to play. Like, just when you just have it like a little, it's like forming that, bonding that relationship together again with that shadow self that you've suppressed for so long. And you're actually nourishing it and showing that side love as well. That is actually showing your whole being love. That's that self-care. That is that self-love.
It is.
That oneness, that wholeness that I think many of us, we don't, I can't even find the word right now. It's in my brain.
So many people walking around that are unhealed and carrying this childhood trauma. And some people don't know the terminology. Like just in the last 2 years, I've started learning about like empaths and star seeds and even the word shadow work. Just learning the terminology helps you decipher what it is, and then look at what inner work you need to do and focus on. Because when you don't have those words in your vocabulary or psyche, you're walking around unconscious still of it, and that's what the shadow is. It's your unconscious parts of yourself. When you can acknowledge those parts and know when they're there and know when they surface, you can deal with things, like you said, in a better way. You're not reacting. You're looking at things from a higher perspective and then responding in a way from the healed part of yourself.
That's it. So it's kind of like the light has the dark and the dark has the light. There's no fighting of, this is how my mate sort of described it to me. There's no, like, you've got your dark and your light in yourself, and you're trying to always be that light person, and then the shadow is always in there like, let me out, let me have some fun. So, it's actually acknowledging it, bringing it to the surface, being aware, nourishing those sides of yourself, because when you show the shadow love, then you can actually bring that whole shadow into that whole love oneness as well with the light. And it sounds, oh my God, I'm just listening to myself and how I'm repeating it. It sounds a little bit juju, if you were to call it. But for me personally, this is how I'm working with it, and it's working for me. It's kind of like how we have our ego, and a lot of us talk and don't realize that that's our ego self talking. So I actually have called my ego a name too. So it's kind of separating it and acknowledging when that Bob is my ego. So when Bob's about, I was like, shut up, Bob. Like,
checking yourself too. You got to check yourself sometimes and be real with yourself, and that's another form of self-love. When you can't call yourself out on your own bullshit, then you're not respecting yourself. And how can you grow from that if you're just ignoring all these things and going through life so blasé? And I just want to encourage people, like, I think maybe we can go over some advice now of what you can do to acknowledge it. Because one thing that I am starting to do is journal. So like journaling your emotions for the day. And then it's a good way to self-reflect and look back at how you were feeling at certain moments, and you know, even jot down your triggers too.
Yeah. And what I've learned recently is being triggered and it's making you feel some type of way, where's the wound? Because usually where there's a trigger, a wound, there's an unhealed wound within that actually needs to be healed. And as I have been quite triggered lately, and I've been blessed. That's why I've said in my video that I swear my guides, I've got some guides in the physical as well that are really helping me through what I'm going through. And I'm feeling a lot better for it because they're able to, I'm not just sitting there with a trigger and staying in this mindset. I'm being triggered. Somebody's triggered me, but I'm putting it back on myself because I'm like, okay, it's actually got something to do with me and an unhealed wound. Where does that stem from? So that's really good to write out your triggers and your moods, your emotions, and how you're feeling. It's like, what is it about this situation that is triggering me? Does this remind me of something from my past? Like, why do I feel these ways? And it's really, really digging deep. And I think that's why people call it like the dark night of the soul, like, because you really are going to those real depths that a lot of people like to avoid because it's too painful. Yeah.
And it can be painful to deal with, but we have to kind of like sieve through that pain to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. And there's beautiful duality in having that shadow part and having that light side of us. Like it goes hand in hand. Like you wouldn't know those lighter parts of yourself, those good parts of yourself without the shadow there. We kind of need that. It's just that good polarity that keeps us balanced and keeps us accountable. You know, we've really got to be accountable for our healing, and doing that inner work, you know, taking that time out for yourself and you know, even if you were to invest in a life coach or something, if this is something you feel you cannot do by yourself, I highly recommend a life coach. And there's so many out there at the moment too. And we spoke to our beautiful sister Kaya here, who has helped millions of women through their own shadow work and through their healing process. So if that is something, you know, if you're listening to this conversation today and you feel like this is something you can't do alone, like just on top of journaling, because it's easy for me to say, oh, go start a journal, because people can have some heavy stuff that they're dealing with. So if you feel that you need counseling in some kind of way, I encourage that, just to start the ball rolling in the process, those little baby steps you can take, or even consider a life coach, a one-on-one mentor that has your back the whole way. So there's lots of options available for people.
I would also recommend just doing a bit of research for yourself. So looking up on YouTube, what is shadow work, or how to navigate shadow work. And it's just all those little things, those tools. If you're really genuinely, wholeheartedly wanting to make that change and dive in deeper, do what works for you. So there's not one type of way. So take a little bit from this, take a little bit of that from what you've read, try this, try that, and it's basically making what works for you, because not everybody is the same. As I said, I was lucky enough to actually just have this conversation with my friend that's done that work, which gave me, I felt happy and empowered, and I wanted to share it with everybody. And that's why I did that video and put it up on my Facebook page, because it's okay to not like certain parts of yourself. It's okay to not acknowledge those parts of yourself, but eventually to do that inner work and create that change just for you. It's okay to actually like those parts of yourselves. It's okay. It's okay to accept those sides, because it is what makes us us. And I think from doing what I'm doing, even though I'm going through a little bit of a situation at the moment, I'm still staying above water. Like I'm above, because I'm utilizing all these tools. I'm doing that inner work, and I'm focusing, instead of the attention outward, I'm putting it back onto myself. I'm trying to get myself through this by working on me.
That's beautiful. And it's good. That inner work that so many of us do avoid is so important. I cannot emphasize that. It's part of your soul's evolution. It's part of your soul's journey to be healed in this lifetime. I believe like 2022 has been this whole great purge in the collective, and people are starting to see not only what is happening around them in terms of our governmental systems and the, you know, the schooling systems, the indoctrination. They're seeing that we're not who we were told we were, like growing up. We are so much more. We're, you know, we've been suppressed from a lot of information. That is what is coming out at the moment. We've been suppressed from having the tools to empower ourselves. You know, we've been taught to look to other people for help or to admire other people, but it's time for us to start admiring ourselves, to put ourselves on a pedestal and know that we are important. We have important gifts to bring in this earth, you know, and by suppressing those darker parts of ourselves, we're not allowing ourselves to live our life to our fullest potential. And, you know, it's beautiful. It's beautiful to live your, you know, just to live your life and without a shame, without it, because like I went through my whole 20s I struggled through my 20s. Like I struggled with depression every year. You know, I've been put into, what would you call it, like when you're put into, like when you're locked up, like, and you've had a mental breakdowns, like I've been put into like that side of the hospital. And it's not that was my rock bottom. I hit that rock bottom several times in my lifetime. I've been admitted to you know, mental health facilities because I never dealt with it. But when I look back at it, I didn't know what was happening to me. Like I said, I didn't know the terminology. I didn't know myself, my inner core. I didn't know what my triggers were. And it was going through the last maybe 2 to 3 years that I've acknowledged that side of myself, acknowledged the trauma and acknowledged that it was affecting my life today. Because so many times we're in denial and we say, oh, that was in the past, but there's something unhealed there, like you were saying earlier, that lies underneath that. And if you don't deal with it, you circulate and you keep going round and hitting that rock bottom until you've dealt with it.
Yeah.
It won't go away until you deal with it.
No, it doesn't. It just turns up on different energies, and it just keeps, it's cyclic. And it's, I swear, like, good on you, by the way. Like, I just want to say, thank you for sharing that and putting that on here, because I think a lot of people have gone through very similar phases, mental health struggles. They have been sort of on that side of the mental health system, and they haven't been given the proper tools and
they just meditate.
Because to say that you come out of that, and then, I mean, look at you now. I would have never have known. Like, you know, you've done.
I think a lot of, no, that's all right. No, I think a lot of people too. I felt, you know, I don't usually open up about that part of my life, but it's so important in this space, because I don't want people to think that, you know, we're just two girls that have it easy. Like it hasn't been easy for us. We don't go through this lifetime without some type of trauma. You know, unfortunately we all experience in some shape or form. And it's been actually nice just sharing that side, you know, because my 20s was a huge mess. Like I was not the person I am today. Like it was a huge struggle. And, you know, I didn't like life. Like I didn't want to live in this world. Like, and I think it goes back to being empathic. I didn't know I was an empath. So here I was being affected by my environment and the people around me, and I had no idea. I didn't know how to protect my energy. I had no boundaries at all. And when you're living like that, anyone can kind of penetrate you, you know? Any situation.
And also, being an empath, I only learned that in the last couple of years that I am one as well. Like, I don't think I'm an empath. Everyone's like, you're an empath. I'm like, oh. So like you had to look into all that kind of stuff, and it is about protecting energy, but you also attract, and if anyone's watching this and you're an empath, you will know you attract energy vampires, narcissists, like all the above to come in and sap your energy. So you being an empath and not knowing, realizing this back when you're in your 20s, you would have had a lot of that where you would have to.
You just don't know. Yeah, you don't know how to protect yourself energetically. You don't, and just like that, you don't have that in your vocabulary, your terminology, your psyche. So you're just like, I felt like I was like just blasé, like just going through life, very connected to the worldly aspect and not my spiritual side at all. Yeah. I had completely shut that side down of me. It was non-existent in my 20s. But I'm just, you know, as you grow and you learn in this lifetime and you evolve, it's just, I look back at my 20s and I'm like, you know, I was a bit of a wild child and I was a big mess, but I had to go through all that big mess and pain to share my story now. And hopefully, just like we're doing today, sharing our, you know, our experiences in the hope that we inspire others to start doing that work and healing, because ultimately that's what I want. I just want people to heal. I want people to be the best versions of themselves and live their best lives.
Yeah. Oh, beautifully said. And I just want to touch on that. Is that what I want people to accept who they are, change what they want to change. Like, you know, it's not changing who you are. It's just making those little changes to your growth. And that's what you like saying, like, the same with me. Like, I've been through all sorts of places in my 20s. And, you know, it led me to where I am today. And there's not a damn thing that I regret, because I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And it definitely shapes who you are. It's a path, it's a journey that we all have to take. And I always look at situations that happen or have happened, and I'm like, okay, I understand what that lesson was. I understand what I had to learn, because now I realize, like, if I hadn't done that, then I wouldn't be here. So I do a lot of self-reflection. I'm quite analytical.
Awesome.
Yeah. And my mum always says, oh, you could analyze everything within myself, with every situation.
That's why you'll be a good counselor too.
But yeah, so it's just finding that we're not all perfect. We all of us have a real, like, we have traits that we don't like about ourselves. But just learning to nourish those sides of us, realizing that they aren't who we are as a whole. They're just a part of us. And just acknowledging that and finding that self-acceptance, then we then find us that self-love.
Yeah, and accepting it first is the first step, like accepting that part of yourself and acknowledging it brings it to you, because the shadow is the unconscious part of you. By acknowledging it, we're bringing it into our subconsciousness and we can hopefully deal with it and heal.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, this has been such a lovely way to spend my Tuesday, honestly, just being able to you know, just having these, it's not like a vent, it's like just being able to discuss these parts of ourselves too and what we're going through, because it's so human to have these parts of ourselves. So, you know, we want people to know, don't be ashamed, lean into it and flow with it.
Perfect. I love that. I think it's a beautiful way to end this episode.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So thank you everyone for tuning into another episode. I hope that, you know, you take away something from this conversation today. And as always, we appreciate everyone that checks in every week. And, you know, if you really like the content that we share here, please consider subscribing to our channel. It supports us in a big way and helps us grow and get our name out there. And also share this link. If you know someone that's dealing with, you know, on a healing journey themselves and, you know, would benefit from hearing this conversation, share the link. We really do appreciate that.
Awesome. Cool.
Have a great week, everyone. Ka kite.